my bedroom has been dead for quite some time, and part of the
Mm,
reason why my bedroom is dead is
yeah.
because they could only get off in a used diaper.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, but it didn't matter, my sexual needs didn't matter.
Of course not.
Nothing about me mattered. In fact, I remember that was the one thing I probably repeated 1,000 times. Death by 1,000 paper cuts is what it was.
Yeah.
And each time I would yell out in pain, I'd be saying,
Yeah.
all I want to do is just matter.
Hey everybody, I caught myself a really, 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 really important interview today. So, not that they all aren't, but this one I feel very connected to on so many levels because we're just having a lot of stuff happen in this so called community that's affecting people outside of our community in a way that when you hear the story today, I think it's going to help a lot of people, as well as I want you to really give this person a lot of love and compassion in the comments because it takes a lot for a person. So this person is going to have to hide their identity because it's a you'll see why. And so with that, thanks for liking, subscribing, thanks for helping to make this channel grow. Thanks everybody for participating and creating space for voices that don't get heard. And so with that, today I have this beautiful human named Anna, and Anna's going to introduce themselves and then we'll move on. So hey Anna, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Buck. I've been watching your show, and what prompted me to come on today was another interview you had had with a trans widow, and the people who were commenting were like, "This is so bizarre, I can't even believe it." And I thought, "Oh, buddy, they need to buckle up because they haven't heard anything yet." I was
Wow.
like, her story's tame compared to mine.
Oh my God. So
So,
scared.
but
Okay.
yeah, it was also very relatable, and the
Yeah.
fact that it's relatable, and people are saying, "Oh, I can't believe it," it's because no one's hearing about it.
Thank you.
We're not allowed to talk as women who have had a partner decide that they're trans. That's we aren't allowed to disagree. So if I want to start at the beginning, I was with this individual for over 20 years.
Okay.
Love, I consider them the love of my life. Like,
Wow.
I fell in love with them hard,
Wow.
invested in myself into them whole hog.
Okay.
I was, my heart was theirs.
Hmm.
And so I think when you fall in love with someone, you've got that wonderful chemical cocktail going on, which gives you those rose-colored glasses like no other.
Yeah.
So, and rose-colored glasses really hide those red flags really well. Just,
Great point.
yeah.
Yes.
So the, you know, we were well into our relationship for a good 6 months to a year before they, confessed that, they got off on dressing in women's clothes. And
Okay.
I mean, very specifically, it was I got off wearing women's clothes. This was something that I did
Okay.
to arouse and pleasure myself with. And
Okay.
and I was just like, that's kind of hot. That's I
Great.
can get on board with that. Sure.
Great.
This
Great.
is something I can definitely accommodate you, the person I genuinely love,
Hmm.
in doing. It wasn't until, but it wasn't until much longer after that that, and for a while, true, just so you know, for a while, that was what it was. They would
Right.
dress up, we would have some fun,
Great.
um, but as, and then life would go on. It was good. There was at one point, where they were like, "Oh, well, what if I'm trans?" And I was like, and I thought, well, no, I don't believe so. When they told me they were a transvestite,
Hmm.
a fetishist transvestite,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought, okay, well, let's learn some more about this so I understand. And
Great.
I'm, as I mentioned before, I am a diagnosed autistic individual. I was diagnosed
Okay.
as a child. Very
Okay.
uncommon for a girl. You have to be pretty weird
Yeah.
for them
Yeah.
to pick up, because girls try so much harder to be normal, a
Okay.
lot of times.
Oh, right. I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I was immediately, you know, I want to know all about you. I'm so in love with you. I want to know all about you. So I
Hmm.
learned all about, what it is to have, you know, uh, a trans fetish, where you're a transvestite fetishist, and
Hmm.
really, use that to have to some advantage. The the porn that exists where the women dress up the guy and then have their way.
Yeah.
That was a a good Friday night.
Yeah.
So
Great.
yeah, no harm, no foul.
That's right.
But what happened was is eventually they started internalizing it. And how did they internalize it? They went on the internet.
Mm,
They went on the
yeah.
internet and somebody broached it. Well, and for one, they really had a lot of self-loathing in regards to
Right.
this habit of theirs
Right.
that they had.
Okay.
And so that self-loathing was like, how can I hate myself less? Well, I certainly won't embrace this as, uh, this can't be normal. But if it is normal, then,
Right.
what exactly about it is the normal part?
Mm,
So it wasn't until 2 years into our relationship, like we had had a
okay.
breakup and gotten back together,
Hmm.
um, when I learned about the infantilism, where they like to not just dress up, but in their own time, they like dressing as a baby girl. Yeah,
So your partner was also doing that?
yeah. He was
Oh
doing that on the
wow.
side without telling me until I found some pictures. And
Oh wow.
yeah,
Okay.
but the pictures were actually not of him, it was of women dressed as like actual women, like hetero, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
born
Like women.
female women.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I looked at these pictures and my first thought was like, do, do you
What?
want me to do this now? Is this what you want
Oh my
now?
god.
Is this what, because this I immediately, there was no shade of rose in those rose colored
Oh
glasses where the
wow.
red flags didn't show up on this one.
Wow.
So, not at
Wow.
all. And he was just like, no, you don't understand. That's not what I want from you. That's what I want to be.
A
And I
baby.
said, yeah, a baby. And yeah, and it got to the point where he was so insistent on this that, and interestingly enough, I had been with a man before him who also had a similar fetish, and I was just like, well, maybe, and I don't particularly subscribe to any one religion.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
closest thing I would say I subscribe to is Buddhism. I think maybe there is some spiritual elements that exist in our life. Reincarnation
Sure.
might be at play.
Yeah. Right.
That sometimes things happen for a reason. So I thought, well,
Hmm.
the first time I was with a man who had this kind of,
Hmm.
fetish, I thought
Fetish.
I
Yeah.
was just like, ugh. And the
Yeah.
second time I thought, well, maybe it's just not that abnormal. Maybe
Hmm.
maybe
Hmm.
that's why lightning that has now struck twice. This is,
Hmm.
maybe I need to be more open-minded about this.
Okay.
Because as an individual, I don't, I believe in radical accountability. If
Hmm.
something is going wrong, I don't look at everyone else. I look at myself. What am I
Excellent.
doing wrong with my life?
Excellent.
What is it about me?
Yeah.
So I looked at it and I was like, okay, so maybe, this isn't as uncommon as I previously supposed.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a matter of I just need to be more open-minded.
Hmm.
Um, that's it. I just need to be more open-minded. The issue lies with me and not being open-minded enough.
Hmm.
So, you know, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna let you know ahead of time. I am not comfortable with this. This is not something I can be comfortable with. And it was just like, well, you have to accept it. You have to accept it, or I'm going to jump off a bridge. You have to accept it.
What? Like that's like coercion and
Yeah.
basically I want that baby acting like a baby. I want my way. If you don't give it to me, wow.
That
Okay.
is exactly what it is. It is exactly, when
What?
I look at a lot of these individuals that are,
Yeah.
that are narcissists, that
Yeah.
are now
Yes.
falling down the trans rabbit hole, these are individuals who, by disorder, have issues maintaining a personality.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
having their own core, uh, individualized, realized self. And to be fair, when you're in your early 20s, that's still developing.
Yeah. Of course.
You're still becoming
Uh-huh.
you.
Mhm.
When I watch things about, how they're medicalizing transitioning for children
Mhm.
who can't, buy cigarettes, can't buy alcohol,
Ridiculous.
can't get tattoos.
That's right.
Um, they can't get piercings.
That's right.
You can't get a piercing, but you can chop it off.
I
Just
know. Sick.
yeah.
It's actually sick.
No, I see that, and that's just it. When I don't like name calling. I don't like calling things sick. Yeah, I think that's a good opinion to have, but it's not the
Yeah.
kind of words that everyone needs to hear to say, you know, this is what we need to change, because
Right.
otherwise
Okay.
it sounds biased and it sounds
Well, I'm super
like you're speaking
biased.
from emotion.
I,
Yeah.
I, I am super biased when it comes to kids. I will tell you right now, I think you know because you watch, I will not tolerate children medically transitioning
No,
or whatever.
no.
There's something wrong there. There is. You're not giving these kids a chance to figure themselves out. Now, when it comes to an adult, I would not say any of this is sick. I would say that it's a fetish, and we need to have the discussion about why would an
Yeah,
adult man want to dress like a baby? A baby girl? Is that what they want to dress like? A baby girl?
yeah. That's what they wish they were, because they didn't. Honestly, it was. I want to go back to the time where I had no responsibilities, didn't have to do anything, and and was loved just for being who I was, because that's what he witnessed growing up as a child, was his mother, shaming him for being male. He was, having issues peeing the bed, and she was
Wow.
threatening to cut off his penis for this.
Oh
At the
my
same time, she
God.
was doting on little girls. Her friends were having
Okay.
children, and their friends
Yes.
were little girls, were just perfect and flawless and
Yes.
could do no wrong, and
Yes.
that was where it was. So
Yes.
I think that's part of where the internalization started. But what also started was when I first was with this individual, you know, the narrative was, well, I started doing this as a teenager. I found some of my
Mm-hmm.
older sister's panties,
Mm-hmm.
and I put them on and masturbated to them. It was hot.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I started with this.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, as the years passed by, especially in the last 10 years in particular, it, the narrative kept changing. It kept changing to, well, actually, I sort of knew I was different from the time from the time I first started puberty, to, well, I knew I was different from the time I was 8 years old, to, well, I knew I was different until when I was 5, to, well, you know what, this is who I always was,
Huh.
and this is how it's always
Right.
been.
Yes.
And I'm just like, no, no, you keep changing your story.
Yes.
You
Right.
keep changing your narrative to suit what you want your reality to be.
Yes.
And there are other people that do that,
I know.
generally not for good reasons. Generally people who don't have a way. Generally people who don't keep touch with reality as it is.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
End up being very problematic individuals for some reason or another.
Mm-hmm.
People who don't value consent.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I watched on your channel, but not just your channel, on both podcasts and for online learning for people that tend to work in my field.
Mm-hmm.
That yeah, consent is generally non-consent is generally what is generally a criminal practice, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
perpetrated by pretty much every criminal out there. They're doing something where they're
Of course.
not, and uh, not respecting others, so to
That's
speak.
right. That's right.
Um, so
Is
on
that attached
another,
to narcissism, you think? Non consent is that attached to someone who's a narcissist?
I would believe that for narcissists, it's a matter of, you know, the only team they're on is their own. They're not on your
Yeah.
team. They're not on my team. They're not on
Okay.
humanity's team. They're not
Right.
on any team but their own. What furthers
Right.
their individual interests. Um, period.
Right. Okay.
So,
Yeah, that makes
you
sense.
know, I
Yeah.
mean, I remember this was many years ago when he was, this was after we had broken up, but was just getting back together. This was before even all the infantilism stuff came into play.
Yeah.
Where he brought me into his therapist's to a therapy appointment, and the therapist was a gender specialist, and the gender specialist told me to my face, "Well, you're a lesbian and have been all along, and you just didn't know it."
What? What?
Yeah,
What?
that
These
was
therapists are
literally
nuts.
Yeah, I'm just like,
Wait.
oh, thank you, therapist, for gaslighting me, into telling me that I'm a lesbian.
Because your partner, your male partner, thinks they're a woman, so that now makes you a lesbian. That's a
Yeah,
bunch of BS.
yeah, because back then, and this was still in the early 2000s, that was when the, ideology was getting embraced that,
Yes.
if you think
Yes.
you're trans, well, then guess what? You must be. It can't be
So
anything
ridiculous.
else.
Yep, that's right.
Your gender
Yep,
dysphoria can't be rooted in trauma,
that's right. Yep,
a lack of sense of self or anything
yep.
else. This is somehow what's happening in your head is somehow a biological reality that everyone must now embrace. And you know,
What?
and you have these people telling you, well, you have to see me as a woman, because this is what I say. And then I have the same people telling, and you can't tell me what I am. That's what these people are
Yeah, that's
telling us.
right.
You can't
That's
tell
right.
me what I am,
That's right.
and then they're telling me what I am when it's not
I
even remotely close to the truth.
I know you just said so much of that. Like they can tell you they are, but you turn around and say, "Don't call me sis." You're a bad. I mean, it's all rooted in that. It's so deep and gross and narcissistic beyond. And people are starting to see it, but also again, Anna, thank you for being here today because these stories are so important. It really helps other people who are struggling with this and not having the understanding that you have a lot of understanding of this. And I think because your background, where you come from. But that being said, you really are going to help so many other people, women specifically, who are dealing with these insanity people who are gaslighting you, right? I don't mean to cut you off. I just find the whole thing so fascinating how they gaslight and then they find a therapist who gaslights you and gaslighting until you feel like you're the bad person.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
people wonder how far down that rabbit hole it goes in regards to how it disrespects and harms women. Infantilists themselves will say, what we're doing isn't hurting anyone. Well,
Uh, Bullshit.
yeah, no, it's definitely hurting people so much.
Yes.
There were instances where, before, my bedroom has been dead for quite some time, and part of the
Mm,
reason why my bedroom is dead is
yeah.
because they could only get off in a used diaper.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, but it didn't matter, my sexual needs didn't matter.
Of course
My
not.
my nothing about me mattered. In fact, I remember that was the one thing I probably repeated 1,000 times. Death by 1,000 paper cuts is what it was.
Yeah.
And each time I would yell out in pain, I'd be saying,
Yeah.
all I want to do is just matter. Please, I
Wow.
just want to matter.
Oh, heartbreaking. Yeah, and it just becomes about them, and then the sexual space or the bedroom space or intimacy. Intimacy is so important in a relationship, and it's not just the sex; it's the intimacy part of it starts to. And if they could only get off because of a diaper or wearing women's panties, or and you're not getting off on it, how is that even?
Didn't
Because
matter.
I believe in fetishes. I have no issues with them. I think that they're important to people and they help sometimes find themselves. But it's a very specific thing, and if your partner isn't into it, then you have to have that discussion and figure out what's going on. But it can't just be about you and your fetish. That's so
Yeah.
wrong. And then you just get left to the side. So now you have no bedroom life. You have nothing happening. It's all about
No,
him.
I
And
couldn't
what?
dress and I couldn't wear and I myself couldn't be pretty because that was a slap in his face.
Oh my God. So you couldn't. Wow. So none of your
No,
needs are getting met. None.
no, and he's telling me I should, he keeps saying, well, maybe you're not a lesbian, maybe you're trans too.
He
You could
said,
be trans. Oh no, it gets worse. He told he even went to our children because I did have
mm-hmm,
children with him.
mm-hmm,
And just so you know,
mm-hmm,
I have no
mm-hmm.
siblings. My parents
Okay.
are deceased. Great for
Oh,
background checks in my line of work.
oh,
When you have
wow.
no other family. And at the
Wow.
time, he was still passing background checks.
Wow.
So at one point when he was at his most stable and had been for some time, I
Okay.
made the decision, okay, my first child was a planned child, you
Okay.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, very smart. So
Great.
far, no serious mental health issues.
Okay, great.
My our,
Great.
our second child, it like me, is autistic,
Okay.
but also
Okay.
very smart.
Yeah.
And, so for us, part of what we're doing is we're grounding ourselves in logic. But, my
Yeah.
husband
Yeah.
went to our oldest child, a boy, I have
Okay.
two sons,
Okay.
and said, "Hey, could you be trans? Are you
What?
sure? Are you
Oh my
sure?
God.
Because it'd be okay if you were. Are so maybe you could be trans a little bit, maybe a little bit trans. Well, if you think you might be a little trans, you could just be trans.
I'm
Because
just
trans is trans, right?
I'm not laughing. I'm actually crying. This is actually totally that's child abuse in my eyes.
Yeah.
It is.
And when and in my eyes, supporting your child's identity is what your child decides for themselves, not what you
Thank
foist
you.
onto them.
Bam.
And it was a matter of, I remember my son coming to me saying, "Why is he doing this?" And I said, and this was especially around the time when, things were happening in the news where, women were trans women were, beating women at various sports and
Yeah.
other competitions.
Yeah.
And I'm just like looking at all and I could see in my eye a row of trophies that women would have held, but they're now being held by trans women, who a lot of them aren't even really
Disgusting.
passing.
That's
It's
right.
it's just
What?
and
It's so sick. It acts to me. I know you don't like, but I'm like, what? Yeah,
no.
yeah. Trans women are not women. Period. I don't care what, how many
Well,
magical fairy dust you throw on that. It's not. It's
I
disgust.
like
It's
to think
wrong.
that I like to think that trans women are trans women. That's what they
That's
are. Trans
right.
women are
That's
trans
right.
women, and there is women in that sentence. So if they want to use she, her, you know,
That's
that's
different. That's
that
different.
that's
I'm not a
different. But no,
man.
we're but
Yeah.
by saying that trans women are women and trying to override all logical,
No.
all the
No.
logic behind that.
No.
Um, no, and I think a lot of people, you know, want to agree in good faith until they realize
Yes.
they just can't.
Well,
So
we were agreeing, and again, I've been doing this for a long time. People didn't have issues with us, by the way, my friend. People were super chill with us because we integrated back into the world, and we didn't force ourselves upon you. And we did make an effort not to make you uncomfortable. Trans women who didn't pass would never go in the woman's room before this, ever. They would never be caught dead in there. That being said, now we have this new generation. You have to call us. That's why I'm trying to keep showing people these are not. They're more people like what you're talking about,
yeah,
your partner, your husband.
no.
Yeah.
So, my children were coming to me, they were
Wow.
uncomfortable, and I said, look, whoever
Yeah.
you are, I love you. I
Yes.
think, I don't, if you think you might be trans, that's an inner journey you have to take for yourself. And
Right
when the
on.
time is, and I said, and if that's a pervasive thought, then we can address it. But I'm telling you right now, you are perfect as you are.
Excellent
You ha
friend.
and to love yourself as you are. And that was the other issue I had with my partner because they didn't love themselves. And all
Yeah.
I kept trying to do is convince them to love themselves. I kept telling
Yeah.
themselves, look, you know, first of all, I was, obviously Satan for
Yes.
not wanting to believe that they were,
Yeah.
trans in the way they wanted to be because they were like, well, I can be a trans woman, and I'm trans and a lesbian, because, and I'm thinking, and as the years passed, it was like, I don't even know if you like women anymore because I read once on one particular I think on one particular psychiatrist website where he said,
Mm-hmm.
fetishes are great. If a
Mm-hmm.
man meets a woman and he's
Mm-hmm.
really into women's high heel shoes,
Mm-hmm.
just totally gets his socks off, totally
Mm-hmm.
rocks them.
Mm-hmm.
And and the woman's saying, "Hey, what about me?
Mm-hmm.
The shoes are hot, but I can't wear them all the time, and I can't
Mm-hmm.
wear them every time."
Mm-hmm.
And the man says, "Oh, okay, well that's fine then. You can
Mm-hmm.
go. Leave the shoes."
Oh
That's the problem.
my God. You know, you're because I think that they don't know how to let go. Like if fetish becomes part of literally the whole your whole life, that's not
It's
healthy. A fetish is
no.
something that you can use, play with, do, and then you have to go back to the real world. That's why it's
Yeah.
a fetish. It's a fantasy. It's not a
And
reality.
yeah, and when I say porn, like
Yeah,
I told them I think you have a porn addiction because he
probably.
had gigabytes worth of uh like infantilism porn,
Oh man,
sissification porn,
it's that.
all that kind of
Yep,
stuff.
yep.
So, when I kept telling him, women do not, you know, if
Yep.
I said, the trans women I've known of that are genuine trans women, they don't put on
Hmm.
a dress and get a boner.
No, that's
Yeah,
right.
they don't
That's right.
so, as a narcissist, what do narcissists do? They twist everything.
Oh,
Everything.
wow.
So he was just like, "Oh, then that means I shouldn't have erections anymore." And then he was proud when he didn't.
Oh,
So
wow.
this was a person who actually took it and was like, "Oh, well, since I'm not supposed to be sexually aroused when I have a dress, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do whatever I have to do in my head mentally to no
Yes,
longer have erections anymore.
yes, yes.
That way I can
Wow.
say that I'm not putting on a dress for an erection. I can, and then they were actually proud of themselves when they could still orgasm without an erection, even though it
Wow.
actually caused them prostate problems.
Wow. It's deep. It's so
It's
deep.
so deep.
It's so psychologically manipulating, and because I do believe that. I mean, I don't get off on dressing like a man. It doesn't make me sexually aroused. It makes me happy. I feel
No, it
very,
makes you exist on
yeah,
this plane
that's
and
right.
live your life.
That's right. I don't have gigabytes of porn of dudes in like underwear on my
No.
thing. That was not. But the thing is, I had worked in that industry 20 so years ago. But I always understood him around my head. It's a fantasy. That's what it's just supposed to be. Something you go on, you use, you go away. You're not supposed to have gigabytes of stuff on and not all day long and all night long.
No.
That's like anything, like ice cream. You could go have an ice cream, but if you have like mounds of ice cream in your freezer and you eat it all day, you got an issue going on there, my friend.
Yeah. No.
Yeah,
And I kept trying to, and early in our relationship, I was just like, well, yeah, the ice cream is delicious, but
that's right.
I can't live on just ice cream. Can't we have a nice turkey dinner or just some regular food, even, some quick
No,
takeout, anything
no,
at all.
because it's their whole life. It becomes their whole, and the sissification thing is like really part of this. I know I've interviewed people around it. It's literally part of it, and it's one of the things that takes somebody maybe from the fetish into this idea that they are trans.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's,
Wow,
it used to be where, and I think it was fine when trans women were trans women, but now that trans women are women, that's where the problem came, because
that's
that
right.
cognitive dissonance just can't go
That's
away.
right.
And it will never go away.
Nope.
It can never go away.
Nope.
Period. So,
Okay.
were they now in regards to the so yeah, so I was getting a lot of mental abuse, a lot of emotional abuse. It was pretty heavy stuff.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
and
Wow.
the and just eventually, I remember sometime I finally just said, "Look, we can't do this anymore.
Okay.
We can't. You're killing our sex life.
Yeah.
You know, you need to stop all of this cold turkey." And they
Yeah.
did. And you know what?
Oh.
It's weird. The pictures from that time, they look so normal and content and
Mm-hmm.
peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And and eventually, and it took a couple years,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
eventually their body started responding to mine again, and
Mm-hmm.
things,
Great.
and they could have erections again, and
Great.
I could, they would cheat with this. When I said
Okay.
no more, be done,
Yeah.
they were just like, no, you're forcing me to purge, and I'm like,
Okay.
I'm putting you in rehab like I would a drug abuser.
That's
This is you can't have any more of it. This
yeah.
is this is toxic
Yeah.
and hurting you and hurting me and hurting our family.
Yeah.
It's hurting everything that exists in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because the two of us in our relationship together is the core of what we have.
That's right.
So, for a while, For a while that was okay,
Hmm.
but then the mental health issues got worse, way way worse. And to be
Okay.
honest, I don't think, when they were bad before, they would get bad before, but they were actually, part of what would happen is when they were still dressing up,
Uh huh.
um, they would be worse to me after they got what they wanted.
Oh wow.
So getting
Wow.
them, so doing what they wanted didn't appease them. Instead, it just made
More.
it just put that contrast into reality of, oh, hey, you know, now I have to actually look at myself and actually see that I really am not this, or, why can't I have this all the time, etc.
Yeah.
It got to the point where it became traumatizing for me for them to do what they wanted, and that was part of why I said no more. The other
Yeah.
part of it was when I realized they didn't care about consent at all,
Mm-hmm.
period.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And part of it was, they already knew that I was very uncomfortable with the infantilism thing.
Mm-hmm.
That this was a, and to help me with that, and rather than respecting that, no, they would get books on why I should just let them do what they want. There are books out there how to respect your spouse when they decide that they're an adult baby or something. And just so you know, this is a book, like there's one book in particular written by a woman for women, that men get their women that are into infantilism. I don't
Wow.
know what the name of it is. I know that part of when the purge happened, I destroyed that book. Like I really literally ripped it up like I with
Good for
like
you.
Herculean strength. I was just, I'm
Good for
done.
you. You
Well,
can't
and
force somebody to participate in your fetish. That is actually, like I said earlier, coercion. And I'm also not cool with that. That's not consensual. You have to consent to being okay. Don't you can't give somebody a book that says, okay, this is what you gotta do to change the way you are because it's all your fault. That to me, the fact that a woman wrote that, wow, that is really horrible to me.
well,
I'm not
maybe
cool
it
with that.
isn't. Maybe that was something she was really into. I
Yeah,
personally
but
don't understand infantilism because and the sexual nature, since infants are not
but
sexual things
but you
and
don't
shouldn't
have
be in
to.
any way.
You don't have to. That's not. It's
No, that's
if it's not your
true.
thing. That's I guess my point. And you're right. If she's totally cool with it, that's fine. But to me, writing a book to teach somebody how to
How to be
be
cool with it, yeah.
that feels very coercive to me. And not again. Remember, I come from that space of fetish. I was very deep around into that, and I know I actually was married to a female to a dominatrix, and a lot of her
Yeah.
clients were these kind of.
Mhm.
But they would come in, do their thing, get dressed and leave back out into the world and go back and be a businessman. They knew that there was spaces for them to do it, and then they could go home and
Yeah.
be the husband.
No, but with infantilism, it is not hurting anybody. Well, it is when you're telling
That
your spouse that you're going to leave them if they don't do this for you.
that's
That
right.
they're gonna you have to change my diapers. If you don't leave, then
Oh,
you don't love me if you don't do this.
oh my God, that is
No, and
so
it got worse. Then it was,
what?
well, I want you to change my poopy diapers. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. That is a hard line. Absolutely no, no effing
No,
no, no, no, no, no,
no,
no.
no.
And that what happened? And the next time I changed their diaper, which
Yeah,
I wasn't even really excited to do because I
sure,
was getting pretty fed up and pissed at that point.
sure.
What did I find?
Poop.
Hmm.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
they did it anyway.
they did it anyway. Even
That's
though
my
I made it,
point.
I was absolutely 100%
Your
clear. I
boundaries.
did not stutter. This was a hard line in the sand. It was a hard boundary. They didn't know what boundaries, they still don't know what boundaries are. They still don't know what boundaries are. They're telling our child now, who is almost an adult,
Okay.
that their email address doesn't actually belong to them because they're a minor. This and I'm like, this is a person who is old enough to work, old enough to drive, old enough to have an
What do
intimate
you mean?
relationship with another person, and you're still trying to monitor their email, and
Oh,
refusing to let go of the.
narcissism.
Oh, so bad,
Narcissism
so
at its.
bad.
And also, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe they're a little pissed that you put your foot down. Maybe,
Well,
right?
interestingly enough, and I'll get into when
Yeah.
they ultimately did leave us,
Okay.
which they left us.
Okay.
Um, there was other instances too. They were doing things where they were being overtly just toxic and abusive in
Yeah.
so many ways. I
Yeah.
can't. I'm not even comfortable speaking of all of it. But
Okay.
you
Okay.
think after the diaper thing with the poop, and that's when I put my foot down. Um,
Wow.
they weren't sorry. Not only were they not sorry, they were like, "Well, how can I still make you do it? What if I shoved marshmallows up my ass instead?
Oh my
So that way I could
God.
just poop marshmallows and it would be fine, right? It'll,
Oh,
it'll be fine if I just do that." And I'm just like, "You
what?
don't hear me say the words
Nope.
no.
They don't want to hear you. They're not. They
You don't,
refuse to hear you.
no. No, consent does not matter. It's their
Wow.
reality has to be the reality. They
That's
cannot
right.
have it any other way. And to do anything less is to, eventually it became dangerous for us.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
One time we were in the car with the kids on a family trip, that we had flown to another
Mm-hmm.
state,
Mm-hmm.
and we were driving in a rental car, and
Mm-hmm.
our oldest child, my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
by a different person,
Mm-hmm.
uh, confronted them on their bad behavior. Nothing to do with being
Mm-hmm.
trans, nothing to do with any of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just they were a bad parent who with, did inappropriate things from
Mm-hmm.
a parental point.
Mm-hmm.
And we after we dropped her off to a place because this was a family reunion,
Mm-hmm.
he then threatened to wreck the car with the children and I inside. Like the children were in the back seat screaming and crying and blubbering and begging.
Oh my
And
God.
and so I managed to convince them to pull over and let me get out. And then I was shaking as I was driving. While the whole time on the way back, they were telling me how they were going to kill themselves, how they were
Oh
going to
my
pack up and
God.
leave,
Oh my
and that
God.
they'd be gone when we got back, and I would never find them,
Oh my
things like
God.
that.
Just
And
in front of the
sick
kids. In front
in
of the
front of the
kids.
kids. And after we got back to my cousin's house where we were staying on this vacation,
Yeah.
they continued to torture me with words like that the entire night. So emotional and mental, not more than abuse,
Yeah.
torture,
Torture.
torture. When I'm begging, it eventually I got to a point where I realized my tears had no effect on this person. That in
Yes.
fact I got to a point where I realized they wanted my tears.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel that. I feel that on some level it makes them happy to see you get so
Yeah. And
emotionally
and
twisted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, I still had the rose-colored glasses on even at this point, and
Wow.
there were cracks forming in these glasses,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and and I could kind of see reality through those cracks.
Yeah.
And as more to, and I started and using those glimpses, I started drawing more conclusions, creating more
Mm-hmm.
reality, or
Mm-hmm.
trying to get a sense of what
Mm-hmm.
reality should be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember there's a wind on my windowsill right now in my
Mm-hmm.
kitchen. There's a bunch of rocks, and
Mm-hmm.
those rock now when you're in a severe abuse situation
Mm-hmm.
and you're in survival mode, you're
Mm-hmm.
just living by the day. And honestly, that's how what it was. The next day I would get up and it was a new day. And maybe today would be a good day. And I wouldn't even remember what had happened the day before a lot of times. It was, you know, it was like that. So, I started picking up rocks that were
Yeah.
interesting as mementos of what had happened. So that if I picked up that rock and I held it, I could remember. I actually started documenting for the last 3 years before they left.
Yeah.
Even if I had to stay up until 4 in the morning to do it, I would document every last bit of how they treated me, what they did, what they said, how they
Excellent.
acted, what they did to our children.
Excellent.
3 years worth, and I'm talking this is 50 pages, small print, front and back. Like I have a whole
Wow.
book. And what these were not. This wasn't evidence. This wasn't something I had was
Yeah.
um, saving up to give law enforcement. Although I'm sure if I did end up murdered, and apparently that was the
Yeah.
expectation of my daughter and uh,
Wow.
and my mother, my stepmother, his mother, like his stepmother was very close to
What?
the family, and well, so his father remarried
Mm-hmm.
when he was young,
Mm-hmm.
and so this woman has known him since he was seven
Okay.
or 8 years old.
Yeah.
So loves this person, has
Yeah.
no illusions to the monster that they are.
Yeah.
And for the last several years, she was, after his father had passed, she was visiting us frequently. She lived in an RV, and she would travel and go all over the U.S. and Canada and Mexico for fun.
Okay.
This was her time, this was her life. But she would come and visit us and sometimes stay for a month.
Uh-huh.
And they were, my spouse was familiar enough with her that uh, she got to see how I was treated. She got to see
Oh,
how bad the abuse
wow.
could be. And she
Wow.
did her best to try to convince me to break that chain. So did my daughter. My daughter actually went to college, got a degree
Mm-hmm.
got her first degree in psychiatry, which when
Great.
you go to become a psychiatrist, it's a whole
Yeah.
process. Like you have to get
Sure.
your doctorate, you have to go
Yes.
through this.
Mm-hmm.
She has her degree and she has her BCBA. And
Wow.
she was like, "Mom, this is abuse." And I remember at one point I said, uh, some years ago when I three plus years ago, and I said,
Yeah.
"I think he's a narcissist." And
Yeah.
she's like, "I'm going to talk to my peers about this,
Yeah.
because I think you might be right."
Wow.
And you know, so
Wow.
and so eventually, I had people saying, "Okay, you're not in you're this isn't safe. This isn't safe for you. It's not safe for the children." Mostly I was the meat shield, in regards
Mm-hmm.
to anything that was directed towards the children. But I even in this long book I wrote to, his various therapists over the years, in which I was literally
Mm-hmm.
begging for help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember like really within the first couple of pages I wrote, my children can go all day without hearing a single kind word from them.
Wow. Just.
And now at this point, so eventually you know, at, they continue to deteriorate mentally, continue to deteriorate, where we got the sense that we did not matter.
Mm-hmm.
One
Mm-hmm.
time after a minor argument, in which everything became all of our fault,
Mm-hmm.
they were laying in the on the floor of the garage on a really hot day,
Mm-hmm.
hot enough to cook them, and
Wow.
and my son was saying, "Dad, get off the floor. Dad, get off the floor." And I'm like, "Please, we can talk. Whatever your issues are, we can talk about this inside." Part of what they did as a narcissist was days and days, sometimes of stonewalling,
Wow.
stonewalling, gaslighting. I mean, you name it. One time, you know, I remember Nana actually being here for a visit,
Mm-hmm.
and she found me on the floor crying,
Mm.
and you know, and I was practically incoherent. I was
Mm-hmm.
sobbing, and I remember my son saying, you know, she's been stonewalled and gaslit for 3 days straight,
Wow. Your
and
son.
yeah. So, she's, and if what's wrong with her? Yeah, she's been stonewalled and gaslit for 3 days straight. And, it even got to the point where one time after I actually started hitting myself, and I only did this like once
Yeah.
because I was like, how much pain do you want me to be in for you to stop what you're doing to me? And I found
Wow.
out that this is called reactive abuse. This is where, I was broken. I mean, they had completely broken me at that point. Took some time to do it. I
That's
was a
what they
strong
wanted.
individual.
They
That's what they
wanted that.
wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Reactive abuse. That's what that's called.
yeah, that's what it's called, reactive abuse. So, you know, that's yeah. And I included this into the letters to the therapists
Mm-hmm.
and his
Mm-hmm.
psychiatrist, just saying,
Mm-hmm.
please,
Mm-hmm.
please, please help us.
But what
Please.
was the
This is so
psychiatrist?
toxic.
What were they saying to you that his therapist or
The
psychiatrist?
first one that I had, um, the first one that was talking to the both of us, when she realized, when my spouse realized that I think my spouse brought me in to this therapist to pretty much point out all of my flaws and everything I was doing wrong,
Wow.
and that didn't happen. So,
Wow.
so then it turned into, well, I've railroaded everything and turned his therapist against him. And,
Wow.
it didn't matter what I did. If I went outside and said, hey,
Yeah.
this guy is blue, they'd
Yeah.
be like,
Of course.
you know,
Yeah.
and what the f do you want with that? How,
Yeah.
you know, just anything. I couldn't do anything right. It was constant walking on eggshells, constant. I was afraid to sneeze in their direction to the point where, I mean, it was so bad. I was literally on the verge of on a nervous breakdown.
Yeah,
Um,
I am listening to it, and
yeah, and I'm not even telling you all of it. It's just pretty bad. And
I could just
so,
picture it. Yeah.
on at the time that I was at the time that I was so close to a nervous breakdown that it had gotten pretty bad. Um, I had three different professionals tell me, "You're not safe to be this person is not safe to be around. You are not safe. This person is not safe to be around. You
My
need to get a
God.
protection order. You need to
Oh my
sever all
God.
ties. You need to get a protection order.
Hmm.
I'm telling you that this is above and beyond what we generally hear. There's women that get the beat out of them and beat within an inch of their life that don't get tortured as bad as you do.
Wow.
And
Oh my God.
so they're like what you've lived through. There's people that you know
Wow.
they're like there were people in the concentration camps being tortured by Nazis, with less skill than what your
Wow.
husband has done to you.
Wow. That is so
Just
scary. It's like he knew. He actually knew how to continue to manipulate. Can I ask? I mean,
exploit.
I don't want this to sound like a rude question, and you don't have to answer it. And I really don't want it to come off that way, but it could easily
No,
come off that
certainly.
way. I just do you think that they like how do you not know this is happening to you, if that makes sense? How does it happen at such a small incremental way that you don't realize you're actually in an abusive relationship? Does that make
Actually,
sense?
so here's the thing. I did, and here's what I did with that. And this is why. So first of all, there's a reason why women don't leave when they're in these
Yeah.
horrible, hostile
Yes.
environments.
Yes.
Um, for one, my spouse is the IT genius that he is. I
Oh.
knew that I was safer having them within on the inside than on the outside. When you get to the point where you
Oh.
realize, for me, I had given up. I knew I was their captive. I knew that there was no escape that would be had for me, that this just wasn't going to be possible. And,
What?
that,
Wow.
yeah, it was just a matter of, I'm going to, out of love. It came from a place of love. Like, if grandma gets Alzheimer's, and becomes and forgets who she is, and starts doing unpleasant things and maybe even hits people because
Hmm.
she's confused and she's scared, you don't stop loving grandma.
That's right.
You want to take
Yeah.
care of grandma. You want to support grandma. How can we help? There's actually a thing that I saw on TikTok by Trevor Noah,
Okay.
saying, when there's someone who's mentally ill and they're having problems, we don't sometimes what I think people do to these people, and unfair, instead
Hmm.
of, what I do, which is, how can we help them? How can we help this person? And what can we do that's right, and good, and as their wife, and having no other family, pretty much, I was like, okay, they're my husband. I'm responsible for them.
But
In
even
sickness and in health. This is
in
my
sickness
job
and in health.
to, yeah,
But even
sickness and in
if you
health.
know, but even like I understand what you're saying, and of course you can't just bail on somebody. But this is different to me than that, because even though you're being literally abused, mentally abused, which is not okay, and that person is mentally ill for sure. But there has to come a time where you know how they say put your gas mask, your air mask on first before you can help
Hmm.
others. Isn't there a time where your safety or your but I see what you're saying also, as the captive you just give up and you just sort of go
Yeah.
along with the
You
because
do
you're
what you have to
trauma.
survive. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're in
and it's
survival mode.
trauma
And
based.
I'll tell you right now, when you're in survival mode, you're just living to get through that minute, that hour, that day. You're not even thinking about,
Wow.
tomorrow, when you're in the thick of it. You're just thinking about, how do I survive this second? When you're
Wow.
past it and you're at the next day, you're kind of thinking maybe into the next week. Um,
Wow.
you know, I had the forethought to think, okay, what's going to happen, in the future and
Yeah.
in years to come? How
Yeah.
much worse are they going to get?
Yeah.
Am I going to have to put them in some sort of facility?
Yeah.
How much are they going to be able to hurt me? And I mean, this is a very bit large individual. This was a person that's 6'6", 240
Wow.
pounds. They would,
Wow.
and I'm actually a small person. I'm
Yeah.
only like, 5'3", 5'4", and I
Yeah.
remember one time when they were in a rage, they picked me up by both of my arms and threw me
So they
to the
did get
point
a
where I
lot.
actually had fingerprints on the back of my fingerprint bruises on the
They
back of
got
my
physical.
arms.
So they have gotten physical with you.
Yeah, they did
They
get
have.
physical with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
They never actually overtly hit me, and they were very
Sure.
proud of that because they would say, "Well, I never hit you."
Wow. Just what mental abuse is just as bad as physical. I don't. That's just ridiculous. But
Yeah.
I see it's over time too. So you said you were married 20 years. So this is is like a 20-year period that this is happening through
Yeah.
all this time.
All this
During
time.
this time,
No.
did you guys separate at any point where you were in different spaces, or you never separated?
No, it got worse after COVID when we were kind of stuck
Yeah.
in the same space together.
Yeah.
But there was a time where, they just I've always had to, I feel like a woman who's always lived in a man's world. The job that I
Hmm.
do
Hmm.
is a vastly male dominated
Hmm.
thing. My hobbies tend to be male dominated. I actually am a gamer and I
Hmm.
like to consider myself pretty good. I don't
Right
stream or
on.
anything.
Right
I
on.
just do it for the game.
Right.
And I'm talking Dark Souls level, Elden Ring,
Okay.
Helldivers. These are
Wow.
my games.
Right.
So, you know,
Right.
these games are, so I spend a lot of time in male dominated spaces, and
Sure.
I am like, I am just as strong and capable as
Uh-huh.
anyone else here, and I'll prove it. I'll die with my boots on if I have to. This
Right
is
on.
this is who I am. I will,
Right.
I will. Yeah, that's the mentality that my family has always had.
Right.
Where
Right.
I heard stories from World War II in regards to my family and the stuff that
Yeah.
they would get burned. Like one of them got bombed while in a tank, crawled out from under the burning tank themselves, walked themselves to the hospital, let
Wow.
themselves out of that hospital 3 days later, and then fought their way north and was in the Battle of the Bulge.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
there's
these
a
are the kind of
bloodline.
people that I come from. My people are,
Don't
you
give
know,
up.
we don't give up.
Don't give up.
We'll die trying. We literally will die trying
Yeah, so
to,
I see you're not giving up on this. No, no. Also, you have kids. I get it. I totally get it.
yeah.
So your children, but
Yeah.
he's also sounds abusive to the children
He never put
never
hands on them.
touch them.
He'd scream at them, he'd roar at them, and he would make them
Yeah.
feel like they didn't want to be alive. He made
Wow.
them feel like they were just objects and didn't care about them. And I remember one time my youngest son coming to me and saying, "Does Daddy even love me?
Oh my God, that's heartbreaking.
Does Daddy like me? Are you guys getting a divorce? Does he like you? Does he like any of us here?"
Oh my God.
These were the kind of
Wow.
conversations I was having with him. And, was my spouse depressed? Oh, absolutely. And that made
Yeah.
me, but, people think, oh, well, if you're with a husband that's depressed, why didn't you divorce him? I'm like, well, that's that.
You can't.
You
That's
don't
why
just
I didn't.
abandon people you
That's
love
right.
like that.
That's right. That's why I didn't want my question to come off that way because I don't
No,
necessarily think so, and I do believe
no.
that
But
hard times are just as important as good times. I
yeah.
do. Yes.
So interestingly enough, the day, so now they are gone. And this is how it happened. The night that
Okay.
they left,
Yeah.
um, I had gotten together with my daughter, her boyfriend, my children. We had all gotten together and were like, you know, we need to do something. This is reaching critical mass. You're
Okay.
not safe. You
Okay.
know, my daughter was telling me, she's like, I honestly expect to get a call from the sheriff to find out he killed you, or that he killed you and the children, and then himself, or something like that.
Oh my God.
And that was pretty frightening. But I heard the same thing from my mother-in-law, um, who, after everything went down, she drove here from Texas. Like she just drove 2 days straight to get here to make sure
Wow.
the kids and I stayed safe after he left,
Oh my
because
God.
she was scared too. I
Even
was
she
I was
knew.
terrified. Yeah, even she knew. So, but the night that they left, and interestingly enough, I'd been at a therapist that day who was just like, you know, telling me to get out, like as if like I'm some person in a horror movie, like get out, just
Oh my God,
do what you have to do
scary.
to get out. My God,
Wow.
you're this isn't something that can get fixed.
Yeah.
You know, that day I had gone. I had my daughter. Her boyfriend was there. She was there because my son had asked her to come. My
Mhm.
older son, because he was
Mhm.
scared. He's
Yeah.
like, I'm scared to be alone in this house with this person.
Wow.
And can you come? And she stayed. She stayed a few days
Okay.
to kind of keep an eye on things. And so the decision was, is we were all going to sit down and talk with him. Maybe we did need to separate. Maybe we did need to have him, uh, you know, go on a vacation for a few weeks. I don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
I've suffered and never had a break in 20
Yeah.
years, but I'll send him to the Caribbean if that means he'll be nice, or something.
Yeah.
Um, but so the idea was is we were all going to sit down and have a talk to
Mhm.
confront the issues head on
Mhm.
and then say with every bit of love that we had, what can we do for you?
Yeah.
How can we help you? What are we not doing that we need to do for you?
Mhm.
And his response to that was to leave.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, he came up to talk to us in a rage. Like he, he was in a rage, yelling, and my daughter put her hands on her hips and said, and she didn't yell it. She was just like, if you are going to be like that, then you can then leave. Just go.
That's
And that,
why. There you
yeah.
go. He
Yep.
didn't want to
And
hit.
hit
He didn't want you. He wanted to be the one. Again, it
in
sounds so
control.
narciss. That's right. It sounds so narcissistic.
Yep.
Wow.
So he said, well, then and so he went, I'll leave, all right. I'll
There you
go.
go.
I'm
Yep.
going.
Yep.
What did he do on his way out? Well, I watched him go into our garage and look at a table, and then in a big rage, just sweep everything off, climb on top of the table, and pull down a duffel bag. And it's on video, and it's like, oh, what? He had a duffel bag ready?
It was all
What's going
packed.
on? I don't
Oh,
know. I
wow.
I still to this day do not know, but the fact that he grabbed a duffel bag for whatever reason, I felt meant he wasn't coming back.
Of
But on his
course.
way out the but on his way out the door, the first thing he did is he went into onto his phone and he turned off the internet, turned off our phones, turned changed our bank account passwords. Like he was burning all that down on his way out the door
Oh my
electronically.
God. That's right. He's an
And
IT
then
guy.
he drove off in a screech.
So he has control over all that stuff of yours.
Yeah, yeah, he
Oh
did.
my God.
And I remember by that time I was already just in a puddle sobbing because
Of
again, I was
course.
on the verge of a nervous breakdown
Of
and I knew
course.
it. I kept telling him, look, if you keep acting this way, I will break. I don't know if I'll be fixable
Doesn't
if I
care.
break if I break, because you have to try really
Wow.
hard to break me. I am
Yeah.
well trained.
But years of smack of that is just
Yeah.
nobody, not one person in the world could tolerate
No.
that.
So
Never.
no. And then after they left, so I immediately ran to the bank and grabbed some cash.
Good
Uh,
for you.
with
Good
my
for you.
debit card because that was
Yeah.
the only way I could
Yep.
since I got a notification that the bank passwords were getting changed by on my
What?
phone.
Wow. Wow.
And the police got called that night because he called the police.
Okay. Asshole.
So he called the police and was saying that he needed to get stuff from the house. And
Okay.
fortunately, the people that came that night were the one of them was a domestic violence specialist
Great.
for our local police.
Great.
And when they came back, did they pack? No, they just kind of walked really slowly and menacingly around the house, just looking at this and that and going, mm-hmm, and not really taking things. They, the way their body language was, and the way their
Mm-hmm.
behavior was, and the way they
Mm-hmm.
were speaking,
Mm-hmm.
they felt even more scared for me. And after they left, well, as they were getting ready to leave, that's when they changed their mind. Was like, no, I changed my mind. I don't want to go. And I'm like, don't let him back in the house. Don't
What?
let him back in the house. By that time I was too scared.
Of
The children and
course.
I were too. We were like, please, no. We're no, please. You'll be back for a homicide if you leave us with him the way he
Wow.
is right
Wow.
now. And so the police were like, sorry, we don't think it's safe. Go find somewhere else to go. He did. He ended up going to his stepbrothers.
Mm-hmm.
The stepmother who drove from Texas for 2 days
Mm-hmm.
straight to
Yeah.
get to me to make sure the children and I stayed safe. It was her
Yeah.
son that he went to.
Huh.
And one night of witnessing his behavior, and it turned out that that individual's girlfriend is a works in a facility for for women
Oh
that are
wow.
victims of domestic violence. And
Oh
she was
wow.
like, this person is not safe to be around. He cannot stay in our
Wow.
house. So they let him stay that night. And then the next day they're like, dude, we are not
Wow.
comfortable with you staying. We're really sorry, but we can't let you stay. Sorry.
Yeah.
And they, and that morning I did exactly what the police told me to do. I went to the bank. I opened a new account. I moved just enough money to cover us for about 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to take everything. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted them to be able to get help and,
Sure.
get what they needed.
Sure.
Um, we changed the locks. And I filed
Wow.
for my domestic and I filed for a CPO, which I was granted.
Excellent.
Yeah. So
Excellent.
I got my CPO, um, and I
That's a
didn't actually
protection. Is that what it's like a
a civil
protection order?
protection order.
Order.
Yeah, a civil protection order.
So they can only come a certain amount
So the
valuers.
civil protection order is pretty much a protection order. It's
So they're
it's
not
what
allowed
it
to come
is.
anywhere near you.
No, no, but it didn't
Okay.
matter. Not when you've got something called remote.
Remote mean
I
like
work remotely, uh, so
oh,
it,
what? So
it,
they
it
have
was
control
bad.
over everything remotely, like through like your house
They
and
did, yeah, and I know that they were listening in through the Alexa. In fact, I think they
what?
accidentally they confessed it to one of their friends,
Isn't
who
that
was like,
illegal?
yeah, it is. But how do you prove that?
Right, that's a good point. How do you
Yeah,
prove that?
exactly. And that is what I'm in the middle of right now. So I actually recently had my phone remotely factory reset by them, a couple weeks ago.
Oh my
Now
god,
here's
I'm
the fun.
getting the chills. Like what? They
Oh
have
yeah, they
oh
had
my
that much
god.
control. No, I mean, so just I mean, I'm telling you right now, I could just tell you the last 9 months of my life would probably take up another 2 hours.
Well, let's do a little bit more here, and then I think we're gonna end, and I'm gonna tell everybody this is so fascinating. And I don't, I mean, I'm fascinated, but I'm so sad for you at the same time. But let's bring her back for a second round so we can really get deep. But I don't want to quit right yet. I think it's gonna. There's some. We
Oh,
need to hear it a little bit more. We need
okay.
to hear it a little bit
So
more. Yeah. So
yeah.
tell. So he leaves. You get the protection order. What happens? So he's
Yep.
resetting your phone. He has control over you. You think he's listening into your house because someone said they were?
No, I'm quite sure they were.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
hard when you have
yeah.
Alexa. It's called drop in. It's like it's meant to be for families. So they've made it super easy for husbands to
Wow.
do surveillance on their
Oh
wives
my
when their wives are
god.
victims. It's wonderful.
Oh my
Everything
god.
he set up my phone. So he to this day, actually, I found out only a few days ago, and again, this has been going on for months, that
Yeah.
my phone is listed as one of his devices on his Google account.
Oh, it's
So
on
even after he
his.
factory reset my phone,
Yeah,
he can do it all over again.
because it's under his thing.
Hmm.
No, but this
Yep.
is good information for other people who might be dealing with this to know that.
Oh,
Get a new
and he
phone,
actually,
people. Oh,
yeah, get it. Yeah, I thought I could. I thought I was safe to not have to get another phone, but yeah, I'm coming to realize I'm wondering if eventually I'm probably gonna have to, like, you know live
just
somewhere else or something, even just to protect us.
so. How long ago was it that he left? How long has it been now?
They left in November of
Last
2023, and
2023. Okay, so
yep, and
almost a
they
year.
first went to yeah, and they were first arrested for CPO violations in January that
Oh,
January of 2024, and
oh,
I'm going to say that's the first round because right now we're well into it, and the but yeah, in the first round, so 2 weeks after they left, 2 weeks after they left, he sent my older son, an email saying, "Guess what? I'm trans." Yes.
Oh my God. So,
It just,
so also
uh,
during this time, he was still doing his fetishy stuff.
uh-huh.
Was
Well, secretly, because
secretly
I
on the
was
internet,
done.
on the
Yeah.
internet for sure.
Yeah. So but 2 weeks after he left, it was like, yep, I'm trans.
Of
And
course. Wow.
you know,
Wow.
just I'm trans now, and oh, and by the way, your mother is evil and wants me dead, and all this stuff that's not true. And to this day, he's still
Disgusting.
telling people I want him dead in a box.
Oh
And
my
at the same
God.
time, I won't let people speak bad about him. I'm like, you're talking about someone I love here. You don't,
Because you
who
have
has a disability
integrity.
and an illness.
Because he has an
Exactly.
illness. You don't. You have
Yeah.
integrity and you're not crazy. Like this person is totally manipulating everyone. I'm
Yeah.
trans.
And when
And
it,
what?
oh no, let me just tell you one more thing before I go. So the
Yes.
very first time they go to have their pretrial for their CPO violations. Now this pretrial is by phone,
Okay.
and they don't even do as much as look at and the prosecutor told me we don't even look at photos. We want to be as unbiased as possible when we do this initial pretrial. So
Hmm.
without having ever seen him or having ever met him or heard him or
Hmm.
anything,
Hmm.
the first thing that he does when he's on the phone, when my husband is on the phone with the judge and the prosecutor for this
Hmm.
pretrial for the CPO hearing, is he and his attorney jump down the judge's throat saying that they are transphobic and that this is biased and that this is all because that they're transphobic and biased, that this is even happening to him, you know that
Oh,
you know
oh,
that they are being, yes.
here it is,
And they
people. I'm
mhm.
going to say this is so upsetting to me because this is the people, the disingenuous people who are using transphobia for their benefit to abuse and get out of other situations. This is why that word transphobia is not only is it
Oh, it gets it,
dangerous,
yeah.
oh my God, they were saying that right out the gate.
Right out the gate. Right out the gate. The judge hadn't
Disgusting.
even met them. The prosecutor hadn't
What?
met them. This was just to discuss the charges.
Yeah.
And believe me, I had to do some serious work to gather evidence on this. So,
Yeah.
and it's so amorphous when it's for digital things like listening in on someone's Alexa.
Sure.
I had to, there was probably, of all the things that I submitted, I only submitted a fraction of it because it had to
Right.
be stuff I could prove. It had to
Right.
be stuff
Right.
I documented. Um, things like that. It had to be stuff that, there was no question
Yeah.
that and I'm still doing that even now. For them remotely factory resetting my phone,
Wow.
they set it up so it could so it happened while they were in jail. So they went in jail, and that's when my phone got factory reset. And when he was on the stand for other CPO violations, and getting address and having that addressed, where, well, what happened to her phone, he, instead of saying no, I'm innocent, he just smiled and in a smarmy voice said, oh, but it couldn't have been me, I was in jail.
Yeah, right. Today in electronics, you can make anything happen,
Mm-hmm.
even if don't even
Yes.
try it.
So
Wow.
that is what I'm trying to get them to understand at this point. So, you know, they of course continue to plead their innocence, and things continue to go to trial every time. It continues to get drug out for as long as possible every time. I had one friend reach out to me and was like, they're telling us that you're the one dragging it out. And I said, look, I've got 3 court dates at the end of the month. One of them is for a farce filing where he filed for a CPO against me on our
Wow.
wedding anniversary in August,
Wow.
where she got
Wow.
denied, but he also demanded a trial for it. So now we have to go do that, and it's just like, yeah. So I've got
Right.
3 court dates. Next week I have 3 court dates,
What
and the one thing that
gross.
is most important, the one thing that they say, is me
Hmm.
standing on the most,
Hmm.
is the pretrial for our divorce, which has been on
Hmm.
the docket for 5 months, is now
Hmm.
getting a continuance because
Why?
they have a doctor's appointment, and that's more important.
Oh, so he's putting roadblocks there so that
Yeah.
things don't happen. He knows what he's doing. He's not
No,
dumb.
he was even telling the guardian ad litem, which I got for our children. He told the guardian ad litem, "Oh yeah, I am logged into her phone, and I don't know how to undo it. But that means she's logged into my phone too, and she could do the same thing to me. And that's the whole reason why I was telling you about this, is because I don't want her to do that to me."
Oh, he's the victim. And also,
Hmm.
Does he not want to get a divorce? Do you think that he does not want, or do you think he just wants to drag this out to torture you?
Both. Well, here's
Both.
the thing. I don't know if he wants to divorce me so much as he doesn't want that. He's trying to stave the axe. When the
Yeah,
axe falls, it's going to fall hard.
that's right.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
the other thing is I have fantastic medical insurance,
Great.
fantastic medical insurance,
Yeah.
and I am aware that they are pursuing full transition.
Wow.
And I know that at 6'6" and 240 pounds, that's going to go over real well.
That's a big person right there. Like,
Yeah.
that's a lot of work. And
Well, this was a person,
wow.
and this is a person who knows that they never have any chance of passing. Never. Like they know this. But and that just makes
Wow.
them more, and that just makes them more pissed off and unhappy.
Of
And
course.
and this
Yeah.
is a person who, when pissed off and unhappy, people suffer. And so,
Wow.
if it was a matter of me not supporting them transitioning, it's because, no, I know that you hate yourself, and I know that if you transition, you're going to hate yourself even more, and that
Yeah, that's
when you
right.
hate, and that when you are suffering, everyone else has to as well. And it was so.
It's so sad to me
But
to watch.
I'm just a turf and a transphobe is what I
Of
am,
course you
because
are.
apparently I'm too. I, and this you want to hear something even better? So
Yeah.
after I filed for the protection order, one of our
Yeah.
mutual friends came over to our house, a woman, and she refused to talk to me about any of it. She doesn't want to believe that he did anything bad, that he could have done any of
Wow.
this.
Wow.
She's like, I don't want to. She here's what she said: I do not want to hear what you have to say,
But
and that what
why?
he did to you, you deserved it because
She's.
you didn't support him transitioning.
Do you see how brainwashed people are? They're brainwashed. Like, I mean,
Yep.
has this guy even gone through any like intensive therapy to be trans? I don't think so. He went from being a fetishist and pooping in diapers to all of a sudden now he's trans. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna really push back on him being trans. I really am. I don't
No.
believe it. I
And
don't.
this is a person who, when I never just would say no to a person. This is
Yeah,
something where I would
I don't
carefully
get.
and logically and with
Yeah,
a
yeah,
sense of time really
yeah.
weigh everything, look at all the evidence, do research, and to be honest, it took a couple. It was after our first breakup that I did a lot of research and was like, this person isn't trans, and was like, oh my God, this isn't. But getting to the point of understanding where they're re-traumatizing themselves and
Yeah,
feeding into their
yeah.
own self-loathing, and
That's right. That's right.
which was this trauma cycle that they're in,
That's
and
right.
perpetuating, you that took a little bit more time, especially when you're in the thick of it. This is something where, oh, I now I understand all of it now, and it's just, but it was a journey. It was a journey to get there, once I actually came to my conclusions and tried to share them with him, you know, I would get
It's not.
shot down.
That's
I
right.
would get
Yeah,
shot
you
down in
said.
forums, and now
Of
I've
course.
kind of gotten so in the thick of it, you know, where I actually have been online to just to see what other trans men are saying, or not trans men, trans
Yeah.
women, what other
Yeah.
trans women are
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
and I remember the trans women just complaining, you pissing and moaning because their wives have left them now that they've come out, and that
Oh
it's
my
so common. It
God.
should be a club that when we're in which there are jackets, and it's like,
um, you can't bring somebody along. I went through two early on girlfriends, and then I realized, you know what? This is my journey. I should
no,
not have anyone. I say that to everyone. If you're transitioning, you should not be with somebody unless you're really, that person totally understands. But it's your journey. It's not your journey. And also, this man, your husband, feels very angry at the world. Back in the day, they would never let you transition when you were still dealing with whatever anger is going on there. You have to really get your trauma based stuff together before you take this. They're not even letting. See, that's why it makes me so mad. There's something he's very angry about, and he's very trauma based or something, and he's
no, and
not dealing.
you cannot discuss this at all. You cannot discuss this at all
See,
online. They delete it.
that's because they're
I
full of
went to
shit.
partners of trans individuals
Yeah,
saying, hey, this is my experience, and it's just like, oh no, if you don't support them, we don't want to listen to you.
That's what I'm talking. What are you people talking
They don't
about?
want to
Like,
know the full experience. It's
because
it's
they
all about the
know.
experience. They want the narrative that they're
That's right.
pushing.
And they know that what they're doing is not trans. It's something else, which I don't care. Go do your thing. But stop co opting an actual space that many of us are happy. And also, what the last thing that we want is for another person to be unhappy with us. If he was actually, he would have said, I got to go do my thing. I love you. I care about you. But this is really about me. And, all the trans women I know that did that. That's why, just from listening to you, this guy is pissed at the world and he's pissed at
No,
you for not accepting his
no,
whatever.
yeah, anything. But my daughter said it quite well. She said it wouldn't matter if he wanted six titties and two vaginas. If he was a wonderful person,
That's right.
and that this was a healthy thing for them,
That's
we would
right.
support them 100% because that's who
That's
we
right.
are.
I totally
You
hear you,
know,
friend. Yes, he drugged the
that's
kids into it too, and he's like throwing baby tantrums all the time. Listening to your stories, always throwing these tantrums. Me, 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 me. What we said earlier, so narcissistically, and all the trans widows who say pretty much have a very similar story to you. Do uh,
yeah.
do do, do you know? Have you
I
by any
so that
chance? Yeah,
so that one so I mentioned I don't know if that was prior to recording, but
yeah,
there's that new documentary about trans widows that have came out, and it shows a
that's right.
narcissist on the that, and I have tried to watch that four
Yeah,
times,
yeah.
and it is so triggering for me.
I
I can't.
bet. I
I
know.
watched one of your interviews the other day, and there was
Yeah,
a lovely trans woman on it, but she didn't
yeah,
quite pass, and
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
triggering to me because I know
yeah.
that I've come to associate a not quite passing trans woman or a non-passing
Yes,
trans woman as danger in my head. This is like a
totally get it.
Pavlovian dog response where
Sure.
it's not something I like, and frankly, I
Yeah,
hate it. I hate it because I think every human being is worthy of love and compassion and
yeah,
respect.
yeah. Of course,
That
I
is
feel
who
that
what
from you.
anybody is. When the same woman that triggers me, because they're they're not as a quite passing trans woman or they are a non-passing trans woman.
Yeah,
I still respect them enough to say, hey, you want to use she her pronouns? Okay. You want to wear a dress? Okay. Are you having a bad day? I'll listen.
I
How
I
can I
feel
help
that.
you?
I know that from you, but this isn't your fault. You have trauma. You have serious trauma going on now because of this person. This person created, because early in your marriage, you were like super cool about it. Okay, sure, we'll play with that. And you never, it wasn't until he started forcing you to not, to like drop your boundaries or to say, nope, we're doing this anyway, or I'll shove marshmallows up my butt. And you can, like he was literally pushing you. So you have trauma. I'm sure you know. I don't need to tell you
No,
that.
no, my therapist will
Yeah,
agree with you 100%, and I do talk
yeah.
to a therapist every week.
Good for
So,
you, taking care of you, friend, you. But
yeah.
but that being said, I would love to bring you back to hear more of this. And what I would love for everybody to do in the comments is
I
to
Yes,
say
I have a lot of advice for women on how to protect themselves if they are women in these kind of
that.
relationships that they know is,
Brilliant, brilliant,
you know, something
brilliant.
that is inevitably going to end. Um, what they can do, and just other things,
Yes,
just what to watch
yes.
out for when you have, because it's not that uncommon to be technology savvy anymore. It's
No,
just,
that's right.
especially
That's
in
right.
family spaces, the same
Yes,
things that make our lives convenient, like sharing a calendar,
that's right.
and other things. Those
Yes,
things can, in domestic violence cases,
that's
those
right.
things are dangerous. There's
Wow.
so much to that's new,
Oh
that's
my
newly
God.
developing in
Oh
this
my
realm
God.
that I don't think people even have a
No, they
it's
don't.
it's because we're
They
crossing these
don't.
bridges as we come to them.
That's right.
So,
So have you thought, are there any groups out there like for people like yourself or women to kind of get together and have
no, I
support?
actually went to Artemis, which is
Okay.
Artemis protects women and children. Well, that
Okay.
includes trans women. So when I started trying to, so I, it was
What?
either, yeah, it was either not go to those groups. It was
Uh,
either go to those groups and try and censor myself as much as possible,
no.
or
No.
not go.
Don't
So
go.
yeah,
I'm so mad.
because heaven forbid there might be a trans woman there that might
That's
get
what I'm
offended.
it's not okay that these trans
But who
women.
cares about my needs?
That's right.
My needs
It's
are secondary.
literally
I don't
that's
have needs.
no, that's right. That's why I look.
I don't need a village.
It's killing me. I can't
I
stand
know.
it. You know what? Stop it, trans people. Like, get it together. Get your own
No.
groups. Have your own
I
space.
mean,
Women need it. No,
if it was a matter of a trans woman being a victim and
that's
this is,
different.
yeah, it's not this.
That's it's not the same. You guys don't have the same experience as trans women, okay? They are males and there's a different space going on there. We can respect them being trans women, but they should not be. First off, they shouldn't be in women's crisis spaces. They shouldn't be in spaces where women are dealing with sexual abuse or narcissistic dudes or none of that. And I don't care
No.
what anybody. You can call me transphobic all you want. I don't really care. It's not transphobia. It's called space. And also,
No, it's
people
called
like him,
respect. That's what it
that,
is, and that's
and they
what
need
people are
their own
missing out
space.
is respect,
Why
and
would
boundaries.
why would any okay when a woman when a woman is in a very violent space around a man and then she needs to go talk and be around women, why would we let trans women be in that space? Why would we ever do that? You are now violating that space for a woman, and what we've lost our marbles. We really have. And it's
If there were other, if I had been, if I had felt comfortable continuing, and there weren't any trans women as far as I was aware ever
yeah,
in these spaces, but
okay,
had there been,
yeah,
I would like to think that she would have supported me, and that
we
even in
would
my
like to know
trauma,
that.
she would have.
Sure,
I'd like to think
sure,
that I'd like to think that she would, say, hey, you
yes,
know, she would support me, but not only that,
but
I would like to have. I want trans women to feel safe again. I want
But
trans
they
women
need,
to feel
but
safe
no one's
again.
saying that. No one. I'm not saying that they shouldn't feel safe. They need their own space to feel safe, as you do. That we have to. We really have to have this dialogue. You are not the same. Your trauma based stuff isn't the same. What happens to you isn't the same. No one's saying trans women shouldn't have a space to also feel safe. But sorry, it's like me going into a man's group. I'm sorry, it's just not going to work because I
Well,
don't have the same experience
if you
as
have a
men.
trans woman that's been physically abused by her partner and she's
Yes.
finally had the strength to get out and
Yes.
she needs the help of her sisters, and that
Okay.
this is the and that this is the and that this is the community she has joined and lives in, and
Yes.
she's
Yes.
passing, and and if even if she's not quite passing, but this is a woman,
Yes.
and who lives as this is a person who lives as a
She
woman,
lives
is
as a
respected
woman.
as a woman.
Yes. It's different though.
So
I'm telling you. It's not transphobic to say this. And you have a huge heart and I totally as a trans person appreciate that, but I want to be honest here and I want to say there might be one woman in that group who might not be comfortable. So she doesn't get to be put to the side for that trans woman. I'm sorry. And the trans woman's abuse isn't going to be the same as a biological woman's. It's just not. And I know lots of trans women who could walk into any room and nobody would ever know, but they know. You
yeah,
understand the difference? They know, and
yeah.
they're not going to come to the table the same. We really need to have
No,
this in a bigger
no, and
conversation.
I've been familiar with the community, for the LGBT community for
Sure.
a long time.
Yeah.
One of my friends in high school was a gay young man, and I was there when his mother kicked him out of his house for being
And
gay.
it's
I was
horrible.
there when he had
Horrible.
to live with his grandmother for being gay.
Horrible.
I have
Gross.
a niece through a I have a step niece, a step sibling that where the niece is a trans man, and honestly, before she even started transitioning, she looked like
Yeah.
a linebacker in a dress when her
Right
and
on.
like in the school pictures, it's like, she fits. Why is she why is that dude wearing a dress right there? That she doesn't,
Yeah,
she
right
passed.
on.
She didn't even pass as a woman as a woman. So,
Yeah, right. That's
you know,
right. But that's
no one's
it.
surprised that she's a lesbian, and no one is surprised that she's now transitioning to be a
Yeah,
man. It's
great.
kind of like, okay, well,
And we could
you do
all
you.
agree on that, but we really need to stop pushing these sort of trans people on other people. I've been doing this for a long time. I know how to navigate the world. And when you navigate the world with respect to other spaces, people respect you back. And sorry, you don't get everything you want when you're trans. That's the message I keep trying to tell
No one
everybody.
ever gets everything
That's
they
right. And
want.
also really understand that when you're going to make the choice to transition. And that's why your husband acting like a big old baby, like I get everything I want or no one gets anything. Really, dude? No, it doesn't work that way. But we're going to have to end
No.
here. here. I have to run to another interview,
All
but
right.
listen, I very much appreciate you, Anna, and I'm going to bring you back on. And everybody leave beautiful comments. I mean, really, to step up and say, "Oh, this is so important." We're getting the message out there, and other
That's
people
the
won't feel.
solution.
That's right, and
Love and
also people
respect.
love and respect and not feeling alone and knowing that this is happening and we need to have this conversation. So with that, like, subscribe, comment, all that, and I'll bring Anna back, and thank you guys so much.